Welcome back for News Talk, joined by Linda Clark, a bereavement counselor with Hospice. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Now you have a lot of bereavement counseling sessions coming up, or groups. Groups are important because it gets people together and it gets people talking and it gets people a place to go, correct?
Yes, and our groups tend to be loss specific, so we've got groups for spouses who have had a spouse die, for young widows, 30s to 60s, who've had husbands die. We have adult parental loss for adults who've had a parent die. And we've got Brave Hearts, which is a children's bereavement group for children 6 through 12, and that's an art therapy group. We also have a workshop coming up called Grief After the First Year, because very often people find that their support system isn't there after a year.
After the first year.
The assumption is that they're done with their grief.
Right.
And that's not
And it's
often the
not
case.
something that ever goes away, is it?
Well, it gets, the word I use is softer. It gets a little easier to deal with, but for many people the second year is hard. And if they don't have the support, then they need to know that that's normal, that the second year can be hard too.
Right. How many people do you think don't address grief, you know, the way that we need to?
Well,
if you're going through
everybody addresses
something?
it differently. So there are differences between generations. Older people were brought up to not express feelings and not talk about things
tough
as
it out.
much. Yeah, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, get on. Younger people are more willing and able to verbalize and identify their emotions and talk about it.
Right.
There are differences between general patterns and differences between men and women in the way they grieve. And just in general, some people are talkers and some people are not.
Right. So trying to get people connected to the resources that they need isn't always easy. It could be a little tricky.
Right. What we do find is that groups are very helpful, because when you go into a room and everybody else is going through the same kind of loss, even if they're going through it in a different way, they learn from each other and they support each other, and the bonds that are formed in our groups often last years after.
Lifetime.
And I think another thing to realize is that if somebody in the family dies, then everybody in that family had a different relationship with the deceased. So say the father dies, well, the mother's reaction in her grief is going to be different than the children,
and everyone else
and
is
the
going to have their
siblings
own
and-
grief
yeah,
story.
Yeah, and so having a place where you can go and talk about your grief with other people experiencing the same kind of loss is really helpful.
Okay, we'll put those different grief seminars and grief groups up on our
Great.
website, WKTV.com, for you if you're interested in any of those specifics. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.